Welcome back to The Grind for an exciting video about the Week 10 Summer of Pain. Now, this quest will be available for 2 full weeks, and we have new objectives for this week. We also have completion and exploration rewards, which we will take a look at. But the objectives are simply that you need to complete the quest with a certain class of champion. There will be one for Cosmic, Tech, Mutant, Science, Skill, and Mystic. So every single class completing the quest will grant you an objective. And those objectives will then give you points towards the solo events, like with the last week's or the last part of Summer of Pain. And each time you get a point, you will then go to moving up the milestones. So some pretty nice rewards. Now, these objective rewards are somewhat so-so. They're not like game breaking. They're pretty good though. And they would be definitely nice to have if you're going to do exploration anyways. And so let's go and take a look at those rewards. Now, it is not necessarily going to be the easiest thing to get a class for each path. But if you can do that, you can really maximize your rewards. So completion rewards are quite nice with 5,000 6-star shards, a 1 tier 5 basic. I wish there was more of that. 2 tier 2 alphas. You get a tier 4 class catalyst selector, which is 3 of them, which is pretty nice. I took mutant there. 15 tier 4 basics and the 1 gold. Very nice. But the exploration rewards are quite nice as well. Another 15,000 6-star hero crystals, 2 tier 25% tier 5 class catalyst selectors, 3 tier 5 basics, and 10 tier 2 alphas, and then 4 of these 3 times tier 4 class catalyst selectors. So again, these rewards are quite nice, but again, not totally game breaking. So depending on how much this is going to cost you to do, you might want to consider saving your resources. I had a large stash of resources and pretty much used them all up for 2 runs. I still have lots of crystals to open, lots of revives, just nothing in my overflow. I also have other revives in the stash that I haven't claimed yet, and then a bunch of units that I could put towards this. So we're going to see how things go over the next couple weeks. But here is what I have done to plan out my run, and hopefully this will help you. What I would recommend, there's several ways to do this, and it depends on what your goal is. If you're just going for completion, find your easiest path. All these bosses are exactly the same as when they showed up in their solo week. And then the Grandmaster is the boss for this quest, and it is exactly the same as when you saw him in Story Quest. Now, there's 6 paths. 3 of the bosses you'll fight twice, and then the other of the bosses you'll only fight 1 time. What I would recommend is looking at the hardest set of bosses and picking your absolute best counter for them. If you prioritize it that way, you're going to make that boss the easiest. And then when you come around to the lanes like Venom and the Adaptoid, you know, a lot of champions can be used for that. Same for Emma and Ghost and Symbiote Supreme and Ghost. Like, those aren't going to be the lanes that are going to really hold you up. So you can use your best counters on the other bosses. And this is assuming you're going for all the class objectives. If you don't care about the class objectives and you just want the rewards, go in with your best counter for all the lanes, even if you're doubling up on the class. But if you want to get every single reward, then I would say take your best counter. So if you're going to look at the Mysterio and Rogue lane, you can take your best counter in for Mysterio. For me, I don't know if it's necessarily my best counter, but I'm going to take Immortal Abomination into that lane. So that's my science path. I've used up science, and I need to find options for other paths. Then I was looking down at the Venom and Adaptoid. I actually just went into that first off without really planning out too much, and I used Doom. And it was pretty easy. And so I used up my Mystic on that path. The next I was looking at was, well, with Symbiote Supreme and Ghost, I could do that with Hyperion if I wanted to, or I could do that with Professor X, which, you know, those are champions that I used when he was in his solo week. So I had that as an option there, depending on what I wanted to do. And then I was going to do skill for the Emma Frost Ghost path, whether I used Nick Fury or Aegon. I ended up going with Nick Fury because I did better in getting her down to a lower amount with one fight, and just use one revive to finish her off. But I wish I stuck to it with Aegon, because that would have made the Grandmaster fight so much easier. And that's the next tip, is once you've decided which class you're going to use for each lane, and that might depend on which champion you want to use, but take your best champions from those classes and just kind of decide which champions could counter each lane. And not only that, but which champions that you could get by on the lane would be the best counter for the Grandmaster, because that is where I sunk pretty much all of my resources. Because the lanes, the bosses aren't that bad, especially if you did them all during this Summer of Pain event. You're familiar with them. You can run the boss over and over until you get a good run. And then the second fights, for the most part, they're not that challenging. So the main part that you're going to be investing resources is the Grandmaster. So take a champion that you think you can do well with against the Grandmaster. So what have I done? Well, so far I've done Mystic with Doom. I did Skill with Nick Fury. I've decided that I wanted to go with Cosmic for the Darkhawk lane, and I think I'm going to run it with Corvus Glaive, because Corvus Glaive can pick up 3 charges from this path, and then actually I would have to double check if Rogue counts for an extra charge. I don't think so, though. But Darkhawk can give 2 charges. One of them you can pick up in the fight. And you can run it over and over until you get a good run. And then hopefully that will make Rogue a lot easier, because you'll have a couple charges. And then after that, you've ramped up quite a bit with Corvus Glaive. And that can make the Grandmaster fight much easier if you can time your Glaive charges to stay active during the wounded phase. Then what I'm doing for Mysterio, again, I said Science. I'm going to use Immortal Abomination. Once I get a good run, I'm just going to plow through. I don't know if Immortal Abomination is the best for the Grandmaster, but I think he'll do just fine as far as, what counters I would have had otherwise. And then for the Sinister Lane, I am thinking that I'm going to use Guillotine 2099 for this lane and use both pre-fight so I don't have the armor buff. And then also going to avoid dexing as much as possible, and that will hopefully get me through the lane without too much trouble. And again, I can repeat it over and over and change up my plan if I need to. Adaptoid, I should be fine with Guillotine 2099. And then again, with the Grandmaster, Guillotine 2099 may not be the best option, but I should be able to get through it without that much difficulty. And she has some heals, and it'll heal with every fight. So that is a very nice little added bit of sustainability. And then for the Symbiote Supreme, I'm going to use Professor X. I have him at rank 3, so I wanted to use him for my mutant option. Now, all of these fights, you can find tons of guides online. I do have several guides for some of the more challenging bosses, and so you can check those out. But again, I would do it as a stepwise, depending on what your goal is. If you want to get all the objectives done, then just go step by step. What's your hardest one? What is your best counter for that? Use that class and that champion for that lane, cross it off the list, and then go to the next hardest boss. Once you've decided that, keep going down the list until you've got one class champion for each lane. And at that point, what I would recommend, what I am doing, is going for the easier fights, the easier lanes first, because I don't want to run out of resources at the very end and have spent all my resources on like 2 or 3 lanes when I could have done 4 or 5 lanes. Because the more lanes you get done, if you're doing the objectives, the more rewards from the objective milestones you will get. So it would be better to invest in the lanes that you'll be able to do with less resources, because then at least you're getting more rewards without completing exploration. Because if you run out of resources with 1 lane left, at least you get more rewards from doing 5 lanes, rather than if you only get 3 lanes, the hardest lanes, done, if that makes sense. And so that is kind of my plan of attack. But not only are you supposed to take the lane that is easier, but whatever champion you've decided to use for that lane, use a champion or do the path that you think you have a champion that will be best against the Grandmaster. So Darkhawk might not be the easiest fight, but if I'm taking Corvus Glaive, he's actually a really good champion to use against the Grandmaster, because he can deal a ton of damage each wounded state. So I'll probably try until I get a good run with Corvus Glaive on this path, because that will be a run against the Grandmaster that should save me resources. And so that's what I would recommend doing for your runs as well, so that you can maximize your rewards with as little amount of resources as possible. So I really do hope that this video is helpful in planning your run against the Summer of Pain Week 10 bosses. And let me know what your plan is. Let me know if you have any additional tips or suggestions for others watching this video. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck, and I hope to see you in the next video.